Good afternoon, I'm Terry Moran, and today on ABC News Live, Donald Trump faces his fourth criminal case. What we're learning now about the charges against him and 18 of his allies in Georgia, including a statute in that state typically used to prosecute mobsters, plus how the former president and his legal team are now responding. And the search for survivors is intensifying in Hawaii after the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. The latest on the growing rescue and recovery efforts as hundreds of people remain unaccounted for. And a dramatic rescue at sea. Look at this, how crews found 4 missing divers alive in the waters off the Carolinas, hours after they got separated from their boat. We'll tell you that story later, but we're going to begin with that sweeping indictment of former President Trump in Georgia. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has charged the former president with 13 counts of conspiring to overturn the state's 2020 election results. She's also targeted 18 other close allies, including Rudy Giuliani, calling them all a criminal organization that she claims, under the state laws, knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to interfere with the election in Georgia. Senior investigative reporter Aaron Katursky is tracking it all for us outside the Fulton County Courthouse.
Criminal case number 4, the state of Georgia versus Donald John Trump.
The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis charging Trump and 18 others, including some of his closest allies, with racketeering, calling them a criminal organization that knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump. The grand jury handed up the charges after dark. The indictment delivered to the clerk at 8:54 p.m., nearly 12 hours after prosecutors began presenting their case. Minutes later, it was handed to the judge for inspection.
Everything went as it should have in front of the grand jury.
Trump is charged with 13 counts in a sweeping and detailed indictment that cites acts in Georgia and beyond. In addition to racketeering, he's charged with soliciting a public officer to violate his oath, conspiring to commit forgery, and conspiring to file false documents. The indictment says Trump made multiple calls to Georgia Republicans, including a leading state senator, the governor, the state attorney general, and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, whose phone call with Trump prompted the 2.5-year investigation.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Also charged, Rudy Giuliani, who peddled falsehoods about the vote to the Georgia legislature. The indictment also naming Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, who traveled to Georgia allegedly seeking access to an audit of the vote that was not open to the public. And Jeffrey Clark, a former Justice Department official who allegedly sought permission to convey false information about the election to Georgia officials. Trump has denied all wrongdoing. And overnight, the Trump campaign releasing a statement saying, in part, they are taking away President Trump's First Amendment right to free speech.
Investigative reporter Olivia Rubin joins us now from Atlanta, along with Neama Rahamni, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. So first, Olivia, Trump has been claiming this is all about free speech, and he got an argument there. But Georgia law states that it is a crime to make false statements, not always. It's not a crime to tell some lies. It is a crime to tell other lies. How are prosecutors going to approach this?
Well, the First Amendment argument, I think, is something that we hear frequently from Donald Trump, Terry, in all of the cases that we follow him in. But here specifically, there is a question with if that's going to work. I was speaking to a prosecutor who is very involved with RICO statutes, very involved with how Fani Willis herself likes to prosecute cases, and said the false statements sort of charges are pretty solid here. But I do think, a point on this more broadly, as we're looking at this case, is remembering something really specific about Georgia RICO statutes in particular. And I think it was something that you actually focused in on last night, which is that not everything that's alleged in this indictment necessarily has to be a crime in itself. There was the example that we spoke about that, you can go out and buy a gun and that's not a crime. However, the key to the RICO statute is if you do it in furtherance of the conspiracy, then it becomes a crime. So what Fani Willis has really done here is weave this narrative with the RICO statute, as I'm explained, that she can really bring a lot of this in.
All right. So, Olivia, thank you for that. And Neama, forgive me for mispronouncing your name there. Neama, another argument that Trump can make is that this shouldn't be a legal case, that this is essentially a political dispute, a big political dispute about the 2020 election. Here's Senator Lindsey Graham trying to make that argument last night.
January the 6th, I was there. I saw it. He was impeached over it. The American people can decide whether they want him to be president or not. This should be decided at the ballot box, not in a bunch of liberal jurisdictions trying to put the man in jail. They're weaponizing the law in this country. They're trying to take Donald Trump down, and this is setting a bad precedent. And what I fear is that you're changing the way the game is played in America, and there's no going back.
There's no going back. Neama, what do you make of that argument? This case being prosecuted because the Trump team allegedly didn't respect the decision at the ballot box. But there is this notion that this is politics at some level, just a hurly-burly, a rough-and-tumble American politics. What do you make of that argument?
Well, there is no going back, but that door has been blown wide open. And typically, when you're dealing with a sitting president or a candidate, it's impeachment or it is an election that determines whether that individual stays in office. But we're talking about criminal conduct here. And I, respect the First Amendment and that argument, but it's one thing to advocate on your behalf. It's one thing to audit the election results. Trump wasn't required to accept them. He can certainly pursue legal strategies as well. But when you're calling individuals, you're asking them to find votes, you're submitting lists of fake electors under penalty of perjury. That's crossing the line from politics and advocacy that's protected to criminal conduct, which is not. So you can't do this if you're Trump or those who are conspiring with him.
And Neama, if I can just follow up on that, Trump might say, well, I was told by my lawyers that you could file an alternate slate of electors, that it had been done before in American history. Does he have a substantive defense because he was taking legal advice?
He does, and I think that's probably going to be his best defense in both this case and the federal election fraud cases. But he was just following his lawyer's advice, and these are very well-respected lawyers. Rudy Giuliani, U.S. Attorney in New York, former mayor of New York. John Eastman, dean of the Chapman Law School. So even though it was bad legal advice, he was just following his lawyers, and he's not a lawyer. So I think there's going to be a lot of finger pointing, particularly in the Atlanta case, because all those individuals, of course, have been charged. They're not unindicted co-conspirators like they are in the D.C. case. So we're going to see who Trump and his lawyers point the finger at, but I fully expect it to be his lawyer.
All right. Neama and Olivia, thanks very much for that.